The Cincinnati Reds are prepared to enter the winter meetings as spenders. You heard me right. We're going to break down what Nick Krall had to say about the Reds being buyers on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds. Welcome into the show. My name is Jeff Carr. His name is Steve Offenbaker, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have been podcasting about this team for a combined 14 years, and we are excited that you're alongside us here today on this live edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Lots to get into. We, of course, cover the Reds every single day because we are part of the Locked On podcast, your team every single day. On today's show, Mark Sheldon got the chance to talk to Nick Krall, and Nick Krall says they got money to spend. We're going to tell you how they should spend it and what that means. It's nice to hear these sort of things. Also, we're live, so make sure you jump into the comments section. Give us your thoughts, give us your questions about this team as we head into the winter meetings. Man, it's looking like it's going to be a busy week next week. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that's brought to you by FanDuel, because you can get the season going with a big return over on FanDuel. New users can place a $5 wager, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 wager. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. And Steve, where we will get started today, I mentioned this. This is not conjecture. This is not you and I having a couple of beers and then, maybe. This isn't even John Morosi saying the Reds are viable candidates to spend money this offseason. This is Nick Krall saying they have the financial flexibility to make this roster better. And Nick Krall said he's going for top talent to improve this lineup, Steve. I'm fired up.
That caught my attention more than anything else. He didn't say they have the financial flexibility to align the payroll to the resources of the peak and the valley. He just outright told Mark Sheldon, we have financial flexibility to go get top talent. I'm trying to translate that to right-handed power hitting outfielder, bang the drum. I was it caught me by surprise, actually, that quote, because Nick
That's
Krall,
GM speak for we got stacks on stacks on stacks.
Well,
baby.
and he doesn't usually speak that directly.
Right.
Usually it's something along the lines. I make fun of the guy for his media persona, but it's usually we're going to evaluate and do what we find is best and watch for the best that there's available that
all
benefits
are on the
team.
table.
All options are available for whatever. This was pretty direct. This was we're not broke and we're going to go get somebody. Is really what he said. And for me, that's a little bit different operating practice here. And, this is probably part of the conversation that they had with Terry Francona out at his house before he agreed to come out of retirement.
Yeah, we're not just going to hand you the keys to 67 old car that's barely hanging on here. We're going to get the parts necessary to make this thing work. I think Nick Krall's learned a little bit, right? I feel like in years past, he's tried to get metaphorical. Like you mentioned the peaks and valleys comment, he'll never live that down. I mean, I think even if they win a World Series, somebody's going to be like, so this is a peak, right? Like how we looking here. But when it comes to the messaging that he provides, there are two things that general managers tend to say around this time or as we head into the winter meetings. They say some sort of flexibility. They say we either have it or we need to create it. And years and years and years have gone by with Nick Krall at the helm, where all he has told us is we are creating flexibility. We are becoming, a roster that can move in certain ways. We are trying to create these different scenarios. He didn't say that. He said, I'm ready to go get some guys. And it's easy to translate this, right? You don't have to read between the tea leaves too much to see it. That's why I'm so excited about it, because there have been rumors that have swirled. We talked a lot this week. You and I talked about Jesse Winker. I got the chance to talk with multiple people about the Garrett Crochet rumors. There was even a whisper of a rumor, and I don't even I hate the rumor itself that the Reds could be talking to the Cardinals about Nolan Arenado. Don't want that at all. But the fact that there are so many rumors out there, the Reds don't leak this. Other teams leak this. Agents leak this. The fact that the Reds are the ones that are the subjects of all these rumors means that Nick Krall is doing exactly what we said he needed to do, and he's being active. So him coming out and just telling Mark Sheldon outright in an article written for print, it's going to be out there on the internet forever, is that the offseason of 2024 into 2025, the Reds are ready to spend money.
You know, trying to wrap our head around the payroll and where they're at right now. I'm looking at Spot Track right now, and if you haven't checked out Spot Track, great website. Jeff and I use this all the
Very
time.
useful.
So they have the current payroll allocations at just south of $60 million, and it looks like that includes Nick Martinez. Does that sound right to you? That sounds
that's the guaranteed stuff. So that doesn't include arbitration.
Yeah. So you add arbitration on there, and you're bumping up around 80, somewhere.
91 is the last 91? I saw. Yeah.
So that's the projected total allocation. So they have the projected total allocations at $90.5 million, $90.5 million. To get back to where they were last year, that still leaves another $15 million ish
just for
salaries.
Last year's payroll.
And if they're willing to, and I think they're willing to add on, I think they're willing to go, another 20 million beyond that. I think there's $35 million left.
Which would put them in the range of where they were in 2021 when they set the franchise record, I think, at 127 million. So that's, you got to love hearing that, because we were talking about that as the offseason began. And then we heard reports, well, they're going to keep payroll around the same from Gordon and from all the different reporters that were saying that they were keeping it conservative. It's interesting to me, though, because there was one guy, and they talked to him at the owners' meetings a couple of weeks ago, Doug Healy, I believe he was the COO of the team. I'm forgetting exactly his title, but he literally speaks like once a year. He said that, no, our payroll is going to be very comparable to last year, if not more. But it was because he's the guy that hardly ever talks. You're just like, okay, well, that sounds all well and good, but what's that really mean? Apparently it means they're going to go out and get who they need. So as much as we want to poo-poo and maybe put down expectations that the Reds are going to spend on a guy like Teoscar Hernandez or a guy like Anthony Santander, I think Nick Krall is trying to tell us, don't count us out just yet.
Yeah, and this obviously didn't come without there being a meeting between Nick Krall and the Castellini group. And I think of all the crazy, ridiculous, sometimes ignorant things that Phil Castellini has had to say, the one thing he has said that has proven true over the last couple of years is he was going to set a budget. He was going to, meet with the baseball people, and then he was going to let the baseball people baseball. And he's done that. And I feel like that's what's happened here. I feel like the Castellinis have a number they're comfortable with. And I think that number was known way back before they even signed Francona. And I think that what they're going to do is turn Nick Krall loose now. I think he really knows going into the winter meetings, he's got about $35 million to throw down on somebody. And for me, the fact that it puts them right in the neighborhood of what they spent in 2021, I think that's important also, because although it wasn't fun for them, they didn't like it. We know that the Castellinis can tolerate that number, and the Castellinis know that they're still going to line their pockets at that number. And in this day's baseball, that's all that matters. Are the owners getting paid, and are they comfortable with what they're going to get? And the answer is yes. They're still going to get paid, and they're still comfortable.
And there's so many thoughts that I have kind of going through my mind about things like that, where it's like, we hear from different folks that are closer to the ownership group than we are. I mean, the closest we've ever got to Phil Castellini was he gave us a double take at Reds Fest, which, by the way, that would be this weekend if all things were created equal, but that's not happening. So
that was not a double take. That was a death stare.
It was.
Let's call it what it really was, Jeff.
But he definitely knew who we were. But there's a feeling about this that they are immune to the fan base? That's not true. Now, they're not taking marching orders from the fan base. We're not telling them what to do, and they're following along with that plan, but they understand attendance was down last year. The Reds fan base is tired of all of the, we're a nonprofit organization and we'll get there when we get there. They're tired of that. And I think ownership understands that. And if they don't invest now, when are they going to invest? And when's the fan base going to trust them? The answer's got to be now. So I'm glad that we are hearing this from Nick Krall, who, like you said, he's not just talking out of the side of his neck here. He knows what he's saying. He's been given permission to say what he has been saying. And let's see what they go get, because that is really where our focus needs to be.
That's right. We know they have money to spend now, Jeff. The question that remains is how best to spend it. Who should the Reds go get? What's it going to look like during these winter meetings? Well, we're going to talk about that coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need in one place when it comes to live bets in the NFL, because they've got stats, they've got scores, they've got all the biggest highlights and play-by-play and so much more, all on the same place that you make your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And while you're there, you can take a look at next year's odds to win the National League. FanDuel has the Reds at 33-1 odds to get that NL pennant. Those odds are actually the same as the St. Louis Cardinals and better than the San Francisco Giants. Very interesting. Obviously, they're still long, but there's always a shot. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
We're talking Reds baseball here today and every day, every week, every month, all year. Off season, spring training, regular season, and God willing, playoffs in 2025. We are going to have you covered. Make sure you subscribe to get your 30 minutes of Reds baseball every single day. And while you're here right now, and thanks for being here live with us on YouTube on this Thursday afternoon, while you're here, click that like button for us, tell your friends, share the show. We want to talk Reds baseball with them, just like we're talking Reds baseball with you. All right, Jeff, they've got money to burn, money to spend. They're going to go do it. They're going to get top flight talent. I believe it. I feel good about this. The question is, what should that look like? You had a great show yesterday with James Rapine dropping by, original host James Rapine jumping into the co-host chair for a hot minute. Nice to see him back. But you had a really good show kind of breaking down a potential trade with the White Sox. This on top of another potential trade with the White Sox to go get your buddy in the outfield there. And the more I think about this, you take Nick Krall's comments, we have money to spend, we're going to go get top talent. And then you look at what would be involved in pulling off a trade for one or both of those guys from Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I think the answer is pretty clear. Just go sign one of these free agent outfielders.
Yes.
You've addressed the pitching by bringing Singer over from the Royals for Jonathan India. You've addressed the pitching by extending a qualifying offer to Nick Martinez and him signing it. And you've got the young guys that at some point in time are going to be in play in 2025 coming up. I think you have to move off of starting pitching now. And I know, I can hear it. Can never have too much pitching. Can never have too many starters. But Steve, they ran out of all the starting pitchers last year. I get it. But the Reds may have money to spend. They don't have all of the money to spend. So I think they've reached kind of the critical balance. They've addressed that starting rotation enough for me to feel comfortable in saying it's time to move away from the pitching. They've got to go get that right-handed power hitting outfield bat, bang the drum. This is the move, Jeff. Spend the money. Anthony Santander is my #1 target. That is the guy that I hope they've already been talking to, that there has been at least a little bit of back and forth heading into the winter meetings. And if those conversations haven't started or can't be started, if there's something we don't know, then you move on to Teoscar Hernandez and try to get done what you can get done. Because the Dodgers are running out of room to bring him back. I mean, unless he's willing to be in the minor leagues and stand by for a spot to open up, they're running out of room, especially if Juan Soto ends up out in Los Angeles. So for me, the time is now. Strike while you can strike. And I know that Santander, I know that Hernandez, those guys are going to be a little reluctant to sign anything until Juan Soto signs, but have the framework of a deal in place already for the guy that you want. So as soon as Soto's numbers drop, you can fine tune it and get a deal done. That for me, that is how this should play out over the next few days.
And I think it's going to move quickly. Like, I think as soon as Soto signs, it might be mere hours until we hear the next big domino to drop in the outfield, because there's only been one free agent outfielder, according to Spot Track, that's signed, and that was Austin Slater. I don't think we're really worried about that. He went to Chicago for some reason. But yeah, like, kind of going back to your point where you started this, there were some folks that were asking me, what if they put Luis Robert in the deal for Garrett Crochet? Would you like the deal then? Yes and no. It's going to cost everyone in the farm system to make that deal happen. Whereas you go sign one of these guys, and I think that's why he is saying we have that financial flexibility, because he has pushed back as much as he possibly can on the need to have to trade for talent. Because let's face it, I mean, you just all Nick Krall's got to do is call Anthony Santander or Teoscar Hernandez and say, can you imagine how many home runs you'll hit here? And then make sure that the number's right on the check, and then we're good. Like, there's not really a whole lot of else to think about. Plus, you get to play for Terry Francona. He's going to get the best out of you. Like, those are the kind of things that this team should be easy to sell on, as long as they're not trying to lowball people. And from what Nick Krall said, they are not about to go lowball some guys. Plus, and for anybody that's saying, okay, but it kind of feels like they could use one more pitcher. I was talking, and the episode will actually release tomorrow, with our friend Tim Daniel over at the Riverfront. And he had mentioned this, and I totally forgot about this. You know, there's a good friend of Terry Francona's who's out there right now. Now, he just had some Tommy John surgery, so he won't be ready in the early part of the season, but he could be ready in the later part of the season, and you could get him on a 2-year deal for not as much as you would have to spend for some other guys. Shane Bieber, man. Like, could you imagine halfway through the season, you bring Shane Bieber into this rotation when maybe you've got a couple of injuries, maybe Rhett Lauder's slowed down a bit. Maybe Chase Burns and Chase Petty have debuted, but they don't look that impressive. You can inject veteran talent back into this rotation midway through. There are still options out there where you don't have to go trade the farm to go get somebody else.
I forgot about Shane Bieber. That's an interesting take. Somebody did that a year or two ago. Was it the Rangers? Somebody signed a guy off Tommy John, and basically they signed him to a 2-year deal knowing he wouldn't pitch in the first year of the deal. And I can't remember who that was.
Was it Malley? I think it was Malley.
Yeah.
It was Tyler Malley.
Yeah. So for me, that's a viable option as well, especially if it's a opportunity to stash somebody without tying up a lot of money in the beginning. So if they can't get Teoscar, if they can't get Anthony Santander, I still don't know that a mega trade is the right way to go. And listen, I'm not prospect hugger. We can't trade anybody. I'm not there. But if you got like one shot to get a guy, then I don't want it to be an outfielder that hasn't proven that he can stay healthy. I don't want it to be a starting pitcher that's had 1 year. We know all about outlier years that then suddenly the player returns to form. I wouldn't be willing to risk it. Wouldn't be willing to risk it at all with this White Sox deal. I think you guys did a good job yesterday of breaking down all of the risk that is just kind of secretly lurking just below the surface with a deal with the White Sox. If you look at just the stat sheet and you look at their numbers, yeah, they look great, but they looked great for a year. They looked great for less than 100 games, all but twice in their playing career. You know, if we're talking about the outfield situation.
Luis Robert,
so, yeah, Luis Robert is I think in one of his 100 game seasons was exactly 100 games as our guy over at Locked On White Sox pointed out to you yesterday. So free agency is the way to go, Jeff. I just feel like all of the stars are aligning for there to be a moment, for there to be an opportunity right now to get this done. Because given what they've done with the starting rotation, if they go and sign a legitimate top flight, talented outfielder, right-handed hitting, power hitter, corner outfielder, if they do that this offseason, here the second week of December already is looking pretty good.
Mm-hmm. No, and it's been very refreshing that they've moved as quickly as they have. They haven't quite, sit on their hands, where even in years past where they said they had money to spend, it kind of felt like they sit on their hands a little bit. But even to add on to your trade point, I think we actually lost a potential trade partner. I don't think the A's are trading anybody because they just spent $67 million on Luis Severino for
And by the way,
some reason.
before you break this down more, I don't think we can use the whole guys won't come to Great American Ballpark to pitch because it's Great American Ballpark.
If they're going to Sacramento.
The A's just signed Severino to pitch in Sacramento. Like at the end of the day, it's about the number on the check. That's just the way this is. I can't for the life of me figure out how some executive from the A's with a straight face was able to convince a pretty good starting pitcher to come hang out in frickin' Sacramento. Have you ever been to Sacramento?
No, I haven't.
Maybe this guy doesn't know that he's going to Sacramento. Maybe he missed the news, because Sacramento, Jeff, that is like saying that you're going to go on vacation in North Dakota in December or something. That is just why Sacramento? Give me a break.
It's just hilarious to see that. And hey, I mean, the A's somehow lured him there. I mean, $67 million is nothing to shake a stick at. That makes him the second highest paid free agent so far this offseason. That's going to change here very soon, but that's just insane to me to think. But that means that I don't think they're trading Brent Rooker. I don't even think they're trading Lawrence Butler. That team is looking to add. So the trade market is even smaller than we initially thought. So go get that free agent. And I tell you what, Steve, let's move into this, because it's time to do some Q&A, time to get into the comments section. And there was one point that somebody made. I want to go to it to start. It kind of that ties in Terry Francona to all of this. That's coming up next. If you can't watch us on YouTube, make sure you find us on your favorite podcasting audio app, because we're on every one of them out there. Make sure you listen to us while you're driving, while you're working out, while you're doing chores, whatever it is. Find us on your favorite app out there. All right, Steve, I wanted to start off our Q&A portion with this, and I had it pulled up and I lost it. There we go. Jeff Frazier. How much of the lip service correlates with them getting Tito? I think they told him, and I go back to something that Terry Francona said. By the way, thank you, Jeff, for the question. I go back to something Terry Francona said. He was adamant that he made no demands. He was adamant that he made no requests about going and getting certain players, certain types of players, spending X amount of dollars. I don't think he had to. I think that Krall and Brad Meter showed up and they said, here's what we're going to do. You get Ellie, you get all this young core of players. We are up and coming. And oh, by the way, we're going to set the payroll at this amount that's more than what we spent last year. They put it out to him. He didn't have to ask for it. He didn't have to demand it, because they presented him a plan that he already liked, and he didn't have to ask for it. That's kind of where I get this. A lot of people are saying, well, it's because Terry Francona's here. No, I think they made that decision before they set foot in his house.
Yeah, and listen, Terry Francona is a smart baseball guy. When he even agreed to have this meeting, he sit down and looked at this roster and looked at the Reds 2024 season and looked at where the holes were. And I imagine the meeting at his house, it wasn't Terry saying, what are you going to do about the outfield? What are you going to do about the starting pitching? How are you going to address? I imagine it was Terry looking Nick Krall right in the eye and saying, identify for me where you think the team weaknesses are and tell me what you're going to do about them. And Nick Krall had to hit every point that Francona had identified. Terry didn't help him with his homework, is what I'm saying. The Reds had to come
Not an
in
open book
prepared.
test. Yeah.
No, the Reds had to come in prepared for that meeting. So I think this is spot on. Everything that's being said right now is part of a plan that, that's why I said earlier, they knew this number way back already before they signed Francona, because they knew they had to address these holes. So for me, this has been a slow rollout. And I think we've all been rope-a-doped a little bit, or been, I don't know how to exactly phrase this, except that they've tempered the expectations. They tamped down the expectations early on in this offseason to kind of slow roll this plan. And to the point where they've done things we didn't think they would do. They've done things we didn't necessarily feel were possible, and what they've done with the rotation, the qualifying offer for Martinez. And now, as we build into a crescendo here at the winter meetings, Nick Krall's like, don't worry, guys, I got this. We're spending money. We're going.
So he's close.
I think he's close to something. So, and I was telling you off air as we were prepping, of the entire winter meetings, there's like a 48-hour period there where I'm tied up, and he's going to announce 7 signings while I'm tied up. And I'm going to be,
I'll be ready.
I'm going to be
go.
crying.
Sure.
I'm going to be crying in the ER because all I can do is jump into the comment section. So that's what's going to happen.
It's going to be Monday or Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But listen, the Reds have an opportunity here. And there's a lot of chat in the chat today, Jeff, about various trade proposals. So let's segue into this, because James the Great, this guy's ready to be a major league GM. He has built the package, and it's addressed specifically to you. So here you go, at Jeff Carr. This from James the Great. What do you think about the Reds getting Adolis Garcia in a trade and sign Max Kepler, who had a 3.8 WAR, to solidify the outfield? Then you go out and sign David Robertson to bolster the bullpen. So the bullpen really hasn't been addressed. And according to our calculations, there is potentially a slot out there that still needs to be filled. Even counting the fact that Graham Ashcraft is probably in this bullpen. And of course, we've said 2 outfield bats are better than 1. So what do you think here, Jeffrey?
See, I'm looking at Adolis Garcia. He's in arbitration, so he's under team control. Made 9, or no, they're projecting $9 million. And then Max Kepler's market value is set at $10 million. He probably signs for more than $10 million. That seems a little bit low for him. I would like that. I'm not really that interested in David Robertson. Like, I appreciate a guy that's done it for as long as he has, but I think he's kind of past the, moving the needle phase. He would bolster the middle relief. I definitely like that idea. I don't know what it would take to get Adolis Garcia, though. And Adolis Garcia, at least defensively, is not as good as Teoscar Hernandez. Now, Anthony Santander is one of those guys where defense has been a question mark a little bit. That's why I rate Teoscar a little bit more than Santander. But Adolis Garcia as well has been a guy that defensively, I think he was comparable to Jesse Winker last year, at least in outs above average. I haven't looked at defensive runs saved. But at the plate, we know who Adolis Garcia is. That dude wrecked the World Series run. I mean, he was a huge catalyst in the reason that the Rangers won the World Series to begin with. But I also think that they are a team that isn't looking to make a lot of changes. I don't know that he would even be available.
All right, guys, let's end there. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Click the like button, click the notification bell, subscribe. If you can't be here on YouTube with us, we're on all the audio feeds as well. Subscribe over there. Take us to the gym, take us in the car, take us wherever you're going, and get your 30 minutes of Reds baseball every single day. Now that you've made us your first listen, go make Sully over at the Locked On MLB podcast your second listen. Paul Francis Sullivan, he knows a lot about baseball, guys, and he's fun to talk to. He's fun to listen to. Funny guy. Lot of good baseball information over there. Go check it out. Link for his show down in our show description today. Until next time, we're going to keep gathering up the news, the rumors, the information. We're going to pay attention to what Nick Krall's saying for sure now. We're going to gather all that up and bring it back here to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
Go get shopping, Nick.